got the mag base clean now, and what I'm doing is I'm masking off the surface that's going to be in between the main body and the mag base so that it doesn't get any paint on it. I want to be able to make sure we have good mated surfaces there so that we get plenty of good heat transfer in that area. So one of the advantages to the housing being aluminum is being light, but also that it dissipates heat really well. So that'll help keep the magnet cool. I've decided to paint the base black so that you know, it just being down here at the bottom, it's going to take a lot of bumps and impacts. So I thought that black would be a very good color to paint the bottom. I'm just going to spray paint this. This is steel, so I don't have to worry about the prep like we do on the aluminum. I won't have to do the primer. I'm just going to put straight black on it so that we can just protect the metal. Again, I put the tape here because I don't want paint on this surface, and I'm going to set it on a flat surface, and so I'm not going to get any paint on the bottom. So we'll go paint that and set that aside and get that ready for the reassembly. One of the things I do know from experience when you're doing this kind of stuff, once you finish painting and the paint is pretty dry, go ahead and pull your tape off. Don't leave your tape on. If it's, you know, you never know if you get off on another project and this stays a while, this can get kind of difficult to remove. So pull it back off once you finish your painting. Okay, so we've got the base all cleaned up. I'm actually going to go through, I'm going to paint it Caterpillar yellow. I've got a couple areas I'm going to mask off. I've went over this with a paint thinner just to kind of clean up make sure all of my cleaning solvents are off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask it off, and then I'll get a shot of that. But once I mask it off, I'm going to go over it again. And after I go over it again with the paint thinner, I'm going to let it dry, and I'm going to spray it with etching aluminum primer, which will be white. And I'll show a shot of that once it's primered. And once you get these surfaces primered, they are pretty well good to build on off of that with just about any paint you want once you get the primer on there. So now we've got the surfaces all taped up and ready for paint. I've got one more piece of tape to put here. Got a little gap there. Doesn't really, not going to hurt anything, but basically you've got the bottom taped off. We've got the inside where the electrics go taped off, and we've got the face where all the dovetail joints and all the rack and everything goes. So I'm going to now take it on and get over it again with the paint thinner. Looks like at some point they probably spray a clear coat on it to help maintain the finish, but I'm going to just primer over that and maybe that'll help it stick. So I'll take off what I can, whatever I can. I'm not really going to worry about it too much. I'm just going to make sure I got a good clean contact surface for the primer to stick to. When we come back, I'll take another shot of it once I get the white primer on it so we can see what it looks like. The Slugger models that are out there today, Fein Tools makes them. I did the research on the colors, came up with an orange, and the magic paint that Tractor Supply offers, the closest match color was AC Orange, which is Alice Chambliss Orange. It's a little bit more red than, say, a Kubota Orange or a just a straight up orange color. So it sort of matches the tools. You can see a little bit of difference between the red toolbox there at the bottom of the frame and the orange color of the cap. Actually, the picture of on the front of the can is a deep red, and then you can see the orange cap at the top. But anyway, the Slugger models out there, there's the JM101, I believe, is still offered. Again, it's about $550 to $600. And then they also have a USA 101. I believe it has a longer stroke and a few extra features. I think it has multiple speed options. It's about $700. This unit, again, this was a single speed unit, 450 RPM, geared, and has, I believe, an 1 3/8 stroke on it for depth of cut. You know, and typically what you're cutting on these things are going to be 1/4 inch plate, 1/2 inch plate. You might get into some 1 inch plate, depending on what you're doing on some bigger equipment, and you know, as far as the size of it and everything. But I'm going to get everything, start painting it now. The housing and all is good and dry. Get it all, start painting it to get it up and get it orange. I can't decide yet if I'm going to paint the motor as well. The Fane tools, the Sluggers that I see, the current models, they're painted that same color. But I believe those are plastic housings on those motors as opposed to these metal housings. But I'll see how it looks as we get it cleaned up and start getting ready to put it back together. So let's get it painted, and we will come back once we get a coat of paint on it, and probably end up putting 3 or 4 coats of paint on it just to get it built up like I want it to look, and then we will see what it looks like. We'll come back then. All right, so we're back. We've got the base painted here. Haven't taken the tape off yet. We've now been another about 48 hours since I painted this. Give the paint time to set up. Again, we used the Tractor Supply Magic AC Orange paint. Has set up real good. It's nice and hard. I'll get a close-up of it here in a minute once I get the tape off. Be interested to see if the tape gives me any issues now. It's been about 4 days since I taped this thing up, and I can tell the tape is sticking pretty good. It's a little bit chilly out here this morning in the shop. We've had a lot of rain this week, and here in the southeast, as I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware. And we'll see how well we can get this tape off. So let's start pulling it off. Take this stuff off here. I just went ahead and put some papers, you know, so inside these holes to keep the paint from getting inside where the bushings are going to sit. Covered up the back end where the electrical plate's going to be. Be careful not to pull that. See, make sure it's not going to pull the paint. It's all looking pretty good there. That looks pretty good. All right, and we'll see if I can get this off the bottom here. This is the one that seems to be stuck pretty good where it was sitting. What I'm going to do is just try to get it started all the way across before I actually start pulling it. Just working that under the edge there. I can tell it's sticking pretty good though. You know, as I said earlier, you want to make sure that if you're going to leave this for any long amount of time, you want to go ahead and pull this tape off, because it's really, really starting to stick, even though it's the blue tape. So that's the Bottom, that turned out looks pretty good. I'm gonna trim around there a little bit. Here I'm just taking the razor blade and making sure I feel a little edge there on that paint, so I'm just beveling it a little bit. This casting had a little burr on it here. It probably happened some point when they were assembling it, and I had noticed that it was not mated up exactly against the base, the mag base. So that may have allowed some of that moisture to get underneath in between the two surfaces. This paint feels to have set up pretty hard in this period of time, that, you know, the about 48 hours, I guess, since I painted it. I'm sure it'll continue to harden. I don't want to get too, knock it about too much until I give it a few more days, but it's pretty hard now though. Again, I'm trying to work the tape loose on this cover here. Sticking pretty good already. Again, it's pretty cool out here. It's not freezing cold, obviously, but probably in the 40s here today in the shop, and I'm sure if I put a little bit of heat on this, it would help that come off. But it's coming off okay for the moment. Try to pull it off as a unit here. Stuck on the edge, obviously, because of the paint. This is where you have to be careful, or you'll peel your paint. End up with a little lip there. I think my paint may have folded over on, my tape may have folded over on me on that edge. So what I'm doing here is I'm just making sure I get all the tape off. Yep, that's what it did. I've got a little edge here that looks like the tape may have pressed down. I may not have gotten the tape trimmed back like I thought I did. So I'll have to figure out what I'm going to do to take care of that. Tape is really sticking already. It's been on there for 5 days, but it's really sticking. All right, so I see what's going on. I thought I had masked over this, but since it's been a few days, this is something else good to point out. I thought that I recalled having the adjustment for the dovetails on the side, and I do. And this paint just has done such a good job masking. And the paint actually completely covered up my tape. So I didn't think I thought I had trimmed this out better, and obviously I had, so that makes me happy. So now you can see that comes right off there. So now I've protected that surface with the tape, so I can, when I mount that support back on there, that'll be right back. Nice flush fit. This edge looks good. Still have a little bit of tape here. And I'll continue to work on this and get it cleaned up. All right. Like I said, that feels really good. It's created a good surface on the unit. I like the color. It's coming out pretty good. Still deciding on how I want to paint the motor. I'm going to stick this back in here just to see how it looks. Starting to look pretty good. So we've got our base painted, got all the tape off of it, got it sitting down here on the mag base just to kind of see how it all fits together. Everything's fitting together really nice. I'm going to call this one done, and we'll start moving on now to the motor housing itself. I think I've decided to at least paint the bottom of the motor housing. I'll go into that in detail in the next shot. Paint it black. Still debating on whether or not I want to paint the upper part of the housing, but this came out so nice. The coating came out really good. The primer filled in any of the imperfections in the aluminum really well. So I will probably leaning toward painting the housing on the motor just because I like the way it looks. I know that'll probably get knocked about. I'm going to try to find a Slugger box to put this thing in because I've put this much effort into restoring this mag drill. I want to take care of it. Try to have boxes for my tools. So that's looking pretty good. Let's move on to the motor housing, and then we will start looking at reassembly. I've ordered some power cords. I'll go into that once I get there. I've actually ordered a few for several pieces of equipment from online vendor, and I've decided to reuse the wire that goes between the motor and the housing. I'm just going to fix that one wire and show that fix, and then I'm going to put a new cord on it. I've got the power cord in for the Slugger, so we're going to work on that as well. And we should be about ready to start the reassembly process once we get the main case unit cleaned up. So I'm going to zoom in here so we can see the unit itself, and I'll do most of the cleanup of this thing off scene, and I'm going to tape it up. I am going to paint the gearbox black, and the main unit, the top of the case, I'm going to paint it the same color that we painted the base unit. Once we get that done, we'll have to wait about 48 hours, let everything cure up, and then we'll start our reassembly process. One of the things I did decide to do, I had mentioned earlier I couldn't decide which way I was going to go, but I'm actually going to repair the cable that was damaged inside the unit itself. Instead of trying to replace this cable that comes out of the motor here, I'm just going to repair the lead. This cable is, this power cord is fine. It's not cracked or damaged in any way. The through-hole grommet is fine, it's in good shape. The only problem we had was this one wire, so I'm just going to solder an extension on that, put some good heat shrink on it, wrap it up as well with some stretch tape, and then we'll put it back in the unit. It should be fine. So let's get started, and I'll give you guys a quick shot of the motor again so we can start working on getting it cleaned up. As I showed you guys in a previous video, this is the power cord that came out of the unit. It was pretty frayed and damaged, and so I went ahead and ordered a replacement. I also left all the fittings on it so that I would know where they were. Again, keeping everything grouped together makes the reassembly a lot easier. This is the power cord that we went with. This is a 9-foot long power cord. This power cord has enough length to it that I'll be able to get a little bit more reach out of the base unit itself. I'm going to probably use a portion of the previous damaged extension power cord to repair the plug, to repair the broken wire on the end of this existing interconnect cable, because the wires inside the harness on the old cable are still in good shape. It's just the outside of the housing is damaged. This is this power cord came from McMaster Car. It's like $10 is all it cost, and I went ahead and got it several because I've got a couple pieces of equipment that need to have the cords replaced on them. So again, that's McMaster Car. It's got a good plug on the end of it. It's good, looks like a nice durable connector, so it's going to be a nice addition to the Slugger mag drill when we get it finished. We cleaned off the labels and everything before. We got those all cleaned up, and again, this is the stick cover. There was a clear coating over these. We used a little bit of heat and got those off, and you can see those labels real well. I'm going to tape that off for the cleanup and the painting of this unit, and make sure that those don't get any paint on them. The brushes and everything on this unit look fine. I looked at the unit, looked inside, everything looks good, all the contacts look good. I did run this motor prior to taking the unit down for overhaul, and it ran fine. So we're going to basically clean it up, tape everything off, get a couple of coats of paint on it, and fix the wire, and then put it all back together. So I'm going to proceed on and clean this up. I'll come back when we get it all cleaned up. I'll get it taped up, and I'm going to start with the gearbox. So I'm going to tape up the upper part, and we'll get it so that it won't get any paint on it, and then we can get this base part painted black, because that's the easiest color to get on here today. We spent some time cleaning up the unit. We got all of the heavy oils and grease and everything off of the case, cleaned up, worked inside, and got all of the dirt, or as much as we could, off of the surfaces, and got everything cleaned up and ready to be taped up. So now what we're going to do, now that we've got this all cleaned up and ready to paint, we're going to start working to get it taped up, and I'll put one more shot in of us after we get it taped up. What I'm going to do is these are air intakes here. This is the brush inlet here. There's a plastic cover here. So I'm going to tape that up, and also on the other side I'm going to tape the wires and everything up, and then that way everything will be protected when I paint it. We'll get that all done, and then I'll get a shot of it before we paint it. We got the unit taped up. I decided to go ahead and paint the upper part of the case first. Got all of the things that I don't want painted, all the labels and the gearbox and brushes and all the different covers that I don't want to get painted are taped up. I'm going to go ahead and shoot a coat of primer on this thing today and let that cure, and then come back and shoot a coat of paint on it or two tomorrow. So it does take a little bit of time to cure on the paint, especially with the being a little bit cooler in my shop. It takes a little bit of time for everything to cure, but it's definitely still warm enough in here for everything to stick well and also to cure like it's supposed to. I'm going to go ahead, now that I've got it all taped up, I am going to take a paper towel with some paint thinner on it and go ahead and actually wipe over the exposed areas again, just to make sure that there's no fingerprints or anything on it before I put the primer on it. And again, I'm using the aluminum etching primer from Rust-Oleum. Once I get this all painted, we'll come back, take a look at it, and I'll change the tape up job, and then we'll paint the gearbox black. We got the motor housing painted. Now I'm going to pull the tape off this end, and we'll retape it back up and paint the gearbox on it, get it painted black, and then we will get back and get a good shot of that after we get it painted black. So we got the tape pulled off. It's a little cold out here in my shop today. Probably would have been better to allow this to cure for another day. I'm going to have a couple of spots where I got to clean up some paint that got under the tape itself. I had an issue on the other side on the label where the blue tape stuck because it's a little cold and pulled a little bit of the label off, but not a big deal. We'll let this harden up a little bit more, and then we'll clean up where it ran under the tape, and then we'll tape it back up and get the other side painted.